I did it. I changed everything. Welcome to devlog number 2 for a game that still doesn't have a name. And I have a lot to say because over the past several weeks I have revisited almost every single aspect of the game, from coding to design to storytelling and writing to anagrams to balloon festivals and all sorts of stuff I just made up. Um, But yeah, I took a huge step back. I didn't like where it was going. I didn't like how it looked. I didn't like how it felt. It felt more like I was trying to do something rather than actually doing it. And there's just a lot of things that I found that I just, it just didn't feel right. There were a lot of features that I really like in games that I did not include in my own game, which felt weird. And there's just so much. So I'm going to divide these videos up into different categories or themes, if you will, if you'd like to use big $3 words. And what we're going to do is cover each little aspect of what was changed and eventually build up to where I will show off where I'm currently at. I would just show everything off right now. That would be the easy way to do it, but there's so much, it may prove exceptionally baffling. So let's start with memory lane here. Let's go down. This is January when I first started this. This tin can guy right here, the Dark Knight. This was the main character. Um, he's blocky. I hate him. He only has a couple frames of animation. And so I upgraded it to this. A lot shorter. Um, head's a little more head shaped. Neck shadows. It's better. It's better. There is a problem here with the armor system that I had at the time. You were going to be able to get a hat and a body piece, and they would both change your appearance and body or head. This guy's a little too small, so I just had one single armor piece, and that covered everything. And I continued with that in this third version because right now this didn't feel like enough real estate to really make things look good. And so I tried to redraw it from the start, from scratch, and I almost managed the exact same thing. Like the bodies are the same, which is what I was really focused on, is like having more torso space, and I failed there. The heads are a little bit bigger. They're actually only 1 pixel taller. I thought it was closer to like Tin Can Man in height. But the head's more squared off. You can tell I'm using a different palette at this point too. I have a lot to say about the palette, and I feel that's probably one of the best changes. Um, but back to the guy really quick. So he's just basically added some back extra space and some top extra space, and this he's a little more squared off. So he's a little bit more light bulb shaped, but and when I first looked at this and I looked at them side by side, I said older version was better. Newer one looks weird. Looks a little, I looks like he's shaped like something else. Um, but I kept going and I like it. So before I get too far into things, you'll notice that there's a new palette because I said so 3 times. Over here on the left was the old palette. This is something I called Pastel Life. I use pastel colors, and as you can tell, it's kind of all over the place, not really in order, and it like I don't know, you can kind of see there's a little bit of logic to it. But the issues that came up with this were that I should not make palettes on my own like that, in this method. What I did here was I started out with um, some colors, and I followed some tutorials on like how to go about making a palette work. And I forgot a lot of colors. Like I didn't have browns, I didn't have grays or blacks or like common colors that you'd have in a palette. And so I added them in. And then I didn't like the greens I had, so I added more greens. And then I didn't like the blues, and somehow I added like 35 blues. And the more colors you add just to like meet a point or fill a need, and the more you start expanding your palette rather than working within your palette or just refining the palette to begin with, the more disjointed each piece of art you make tends to look from one another. And I know from the last demo, which used the old palette, this one right here, it didn't look that bad, but it kind of did. I mean, it could have looked a lot better, and it does now, and that's good. But it was just I don't know. It was getting out of hand, and I need to step back and redo it. And getting a new palette's pretty easy if you've done everything in Sprite, because you could just like replace colors or do whatever and quickly get through that. So that's the progress of the character. Started out as a tin can, and now it's a light bulb because that's what it does. Next, let's maybe talk about the blob. Um, It's got 4 frames. There's 2 frames for idle. They're the same same 2 frames for walking. When you encounter it, it moves at you in a straight line. That was it. So let me point out that also with the hero, a lot more animation frames are used for each animation state. And it was something I originally wanted to avoid because I wanted to do a quick like 3-monther where I just toss the game together. But the more I started enjoying this, the more polish I felt it needed. And as that was going on, it just, I needed more, right? When you change one thing to be better, then you need to change everything else. And the first thing I changed was the slime before I even changed the player. And let me explain this a little bit better. The player only used like 3 separate frames for animation. I used this slime that I created for the new slime. It has more than 3 frames. And it has different, it has an idle in there, it has a damage frame, and it has a really cool attack frame where it jumps and like spins around like a 6-sided die. Wait, yeah, 6. That's how many sides are on a die. That's standard. Um, and so I've taken that, I've applied the new palette colors to it, and this is what we got here. There's a lot of work that could have been on this slime, which is fine. It uses a little bit of subpixel animation. I'm not great at that sort of stuff yet, but I tossed all this in. This is the slime. So when you have a slime now, that has this many frames of animation and your main character only has 3 frames, it looks weird and you start to dislike the main character. And so I have absolutely added some couple more frames. And here we go. This is one of the versions. It's playing around with different clothes, but 8 frames. 3 frames for idle. Little bit of bendiness to it, so he's not just bobbing his head straight up and down, which looked disturbing, to say the least. And walking animation is more of a feet slidiness than a up and downness, because the smaller your feet are, the more I think vertical movements look weird, and it yeah. I've been spending some time on this, and then I added a dead frame because one of my favorite things that I accidentally created in a prior game I was working on was in that game you had a death animation and you'd fall down dead like this. But in that game, initially I forgot to disable the hitbox on the character when you died, and you still took knockback, and so your lifeless body would get knocked around into the air and juggled by enemies until the screen faded to black. I brought that back into this game because it's hilarious, and there's just something funny about collapsing on the ground and then like monsters just like kick you around like a soccer ball. It's fun. It's kind of hilarious. It also makes the monsters seem just a little like more like aggressively vicious because like, oh, you're dead and they're still going after you. Um, I don't know. I like it. I think it's funny. Weirdly, his head like this kind of looks like Charlie Brown in a way, which definitely getting Charlie Brown vibes, and that is hilarious. I suppose I'm kind of running through this really quick, but let's hop over to this. This is the tile sheet with kind of the new. Oh, I gotta fix that. Kind of the new um, palette. Looks like I have multiple different shades that occurred up here that I don't want, and I can't tell if like this is just the tiling behind or if it's. I'll come back to that later. I'll see how it looks. What I wanted to talk about, though, are some of the changes here. And I didn't want to show everything off because it's still in a work in progress. But there's one thing that was a huge, major change that I think needed to happen. And because it might not have looked that bad, and it probably wasn't that noticeable, but the treetop, so the forest area had the tree like canopy or whatever, and that's what these blocks are, and then they had the trunks that went underneath. I actually don't use the trunks at all now, and I use a shadow to kind of just have like an overhang, and that obviously doesn't work with this. And there's a lot of problems with this, and I wasn't sure why this didn't look. I was like, these look like leaves, right? They're kind of leaf shaped. They're lighter colors, so they're different from the center. I used some shadowing and some weird dithering, and I can tell you all the issues with this now. Let's look down here really quick. And one of the reasons this looks really bad is, first of all, these look like scales, right? They don't look like leaves. The shape is just a little bit off, which isn't the worst thing. It's the shading that's bad. And part of this is really weird too, because like, okay, so I did top-down lighting on everything, right? So like the tops of these leaves have where the light hits, so it's lighter, and the bottom's darker. And right above the lightest part is somehow dithering to imply shadow. So it goes from shade to light to slowly to shade, which if you're trying to like visualize the light hitting here in the center area, but not directly above it, it's kind of weird. So if anything, the lighting should be on the bottom. And when I looked around at what other people have created, because, the best thing you could do when creating any sort of art is have something to reference, because if you're like me, everything makes perfect sense and is perfectly believable until you actually make it yourself. And then you realize you have no idea what things actually look at. And you're like, how do I look at things all day long? There's trees outside, there's leaves, I see them all the time. I go to draw a leaf and I can't. I have no idea where the light parts and the dark parts are. So having a reference is always good. And I'm moving away from dithering. It just adds a bunch of orphan pixels that I don't know. The dithering, if you look at this, wasn't consistent at all. Can you tell how much I hate this? So I found better leaf designs, sort of ways to make them. I don't like copy paste people's stuff. I feel weird about it. I don't even like using placeholders, which believe me, there's nothing wrong with using placeholders. I feel weird about it if I do though. Like not like I'm stealing, but like I'm not capable of doing stuff myself. So that's why I end up creating stuff that I think is okay, then later hate. Um, so I've done that. I've fixed the leaves up. I got rid of dithering. The colors all are all different. And where I can show you this, I don't know if I want to show the exact tiles yet, but I can show you this because I took some of the leaves from the tiles and I copied and pasted them and rotated them around to update the bush. Do you remember the little bush that you could smash and it like supernovaed for some reason you could get coins? And it was exactly 16 by 16 pixels because for some reason I wanted it to fit within a tile. Not doing that now. There's no reason to fix everything within the same tile. And I think that's one of the things I also want to take a second to point out is like the tile set is 16 by 16. That doesn't mean all the objects have to fit within, 16 by 16 the constraints. So if I go up here, I'm going to scroll. You know what? I can just pause. And then I can unpause. Okay, so the shadowing looks a little weird. And I kind of showed this a second ago. But you can see the leaves here are lighter on tips and darker towards the center. And so I think that gives a much better view. And I didn't discover this clearly, but like if the light's hitting coming down at this, the center being darker makes sense because the leaves are shadowing in itself. Um, Look at any plant or bush or tree in sunlight. Like the center, which is shaded by the outsides, is darker. So there you go. That fixes this. I'm not using dithering or anything. I have a shadow under here that looks really weird with the sprite background. It's bigger than 16 by 16, so it's a little wider. It's 1 pixel taller, so it doesn't fit in a cell at all. And believe me, when that is shown in the game, it looks so much better. But these are the leaves, and that's what's used to replace the leaves there, and the darker color is this, and that's that. I don't want to go too far into it because I've got a couple other things that I want to just briefly mention. before I kind of give some general thoughts and overview and uh, maybe something fun. All right, we're back on the plant again, just as it is for a sprite, because I wanted to take the time to mention that the purpose of this video right now is to talk about how I'm taking a step back and redoing everything. And the art was something that kind of got carried away from me. I knew the palette was something that bothered me, and now that that's been resolved, when I applied the new colors to things, everything took a whole new light, and that helped me design the characters and things that you'll encounter in the world a little bit better. Like this plant, for instance, I'm not going to let it just be that, supernova of green when you destroy it. Looking at this right now, the way when you picture it being destroyed in your mind, um, I see leaves flying around and then landing on the ground next to it, just in like a little poof of leaves. And I'm going to try to create that. And nothing short of that is going to be okay. I think I took a lot of shortcuts sort of before and put a lot of stuff in just temporarily to be like, oh, this will work for now. And then the more I kept doing that, the more I grew uh, distaste for everything that I was creating. And I think it's important to really like what you're doing, I guess, like what's coming out of it. I know the more you look at this, you could be like, wow, this is weird. You clearly copied, pasted, and flipped some stuff around and then didn't even bother flipping other stuff. But you know what? Don't care. This looks way better than how it looked before. And I like this. I like this a lot. And let's see. Also in terms of design, I think that means so I just have the blobs as the enemy. I just have this slime right here. This is the only enemy. I actually have a second version of it that's red and not green. And that one shoots at you, and this one doesn't. And that's it. The butterflies aren't even back in. All those other characters aren't back in. I'm looking at the design approach to some of these characters. Like there in the forest, there were bandits that would appear, and they basically were the same sprites as you, so they were the same. This is the old one, and they could have various weapons because again, they were kind of just like you. The weapons would float around them, and they were randomly grabbed. But now that I'm designing these things to be a little bit more detailed, to be a little bit more fleshed out, to have more frames, I don't know if I want to take that tactic where the bandits are just people who have random things. I kind of want each bandit, if I have bandits, I might do other things, to look unique and to fit their weapon that they're using. I mean, it's cool that like, a regular bandit or whatever could use like a bow or an axe or whatever, but like if a bandit's using a hammer, I feel like it's only natural that we make that exclusive to bandits that are huge and muscular and really swinging that hammer around to really show you how powerful they are. And if I'm doing that, I'm not gonna like equip them a weapon like I do the characters. I'm just gonna draw the hammer into the sprite, and we'll animate it out as a regular character. So those are kind of the things I'm tackling. Um, I think I mentioned this earlier, and if not, I will again. I'm not even using this damage frame for the sprite. I am using tweening to distort the sprite upon being hit so that for a brief moment it kind of stretches into a similar way. But the reason I did this with tweening is so I could apply like the same knockback distortion to every enemy with a it's actually a tweening a shader. Um, but yeah, I could do that and then just apply it to everybody without having to make frames for every enemy with a damage hit. I might for some, but being able to like distort something on impact is pretty neat, and it's like a frame or two that you actually notice it. So it works and also helps when you're trying to do multiple animations at once. I could probably do a whole thing on the slime, but I'm not going to. That's too much. There are a lot more things that were changed in how the game looks than I'm covering right now. A lot of things you're gonna have to wait till I actually show some gameplay footage, but again, that's a lot to take in at once. For instance, this is the background to the menus. If you remember those, over here would be your inventory. When you mouse over, where did the item show up? Was it up here? Yeah, and you moused over them, and down here there was a display. Yeah, none of that. Nope, this is gone. I don't do that. I don't have the backgrounds at all. Um, your equip stuff is still kind of over here. Your inventory is a lot closer. This whole box down here, it's gone. I've created mouse over tooltips, and that's something really cool. You know what? I think that I'm gonna say less, and I lied. I think I should be showing everything right now. This is kind of a scene from the game right now, and I'm just gonna sit here and say take it all in. This is a drastic change from before. And I wasn't going to go straight into it, but I think that's actually the best way to. If I'm talking about how things look without showing the game directly, it doesn't work. Um, as you can tell, the main character has more movements than before. They still look the mouse cursor. I don't know if you could see it. I don't know if it's picking up, but it's a square right now. That's not what it's going to be. Um, there's a few frames of that animation, and again, I think I talked about that a little bit. I did just for a look. There is no magic system. I just tossed a magic bar in there for now. I don't know. I just felt like I'd redo the whole HUD. I got the coins to align better with the text. I replaced the giant lunch bags with the smaller lunch bag, which does not look like a lunch bag at all, but I kind of like it more. So I'm gonna keep that for now. I'm just using hearts. These aren't fancy. I originally made the hearts too big, and then when you have a maximum, they were like way out half the screen. And this way, I could do two rows of 10. Each heart has a regular and a damage portion, so there's a maximum of 40 health, which I feel like that's fair for now. Easily changed. I said I was going to do it. Weapons are now equipped with the hotbar, which is already here. And you can just scroll the mouse to go between the stick, which is the same kind of. I did change how it's aligned a little bit more, and the rocks, which now have a trail, which I didn't know how to do trails till recently, but that makes them cool. And the rocks are also bigger. One thing you probably didn't notice was that I actually increased the how close everything is to the screen. I guess the zoom on the camera by 20%. So everything's a little bit bigger, a little bit closer. You don't see as far, but I think it makes everything look better. A couple things I want to point out are that the tops of the tree line I was talking about, there's a big leaf right over here. It kind of looks like a goldfish cracker, and I'm not going to change it because it makes me laugh. And it looks, for some reason, I really like this pattern with the giant leaves over and over. It looks very like I don't know, like a natural like castle wall in a way. I don't know. I like it. The shadows didn't actually turn out as how I wanted at first underneath the trees. I did use that to replace the tree stumps, but the fact that they're kind of broken up and don't really match up well, I kind of like that a lot. Like the more I look at it, the more it feels more natural because it's not consistent with the tiles. Um, you can walk under the shadow or under the trees a little bit, and then it's the hitboxes are only on the solid dark portions. Um, let's see, what else is there? Oh, that's right. I haven't touched this menu at all. It's still the old menu. So you can see how that looks. We're going to bring up the items. This is what I have right now. I just slid everything over, removed the backgrounds. I took each of these cells and I just this is the most professional technique I've ever done. I took the right half of it and moved that right half up one frame or up one pixel. There we go. The entire thing somehow looks a lot better now. This is armor. It's called white because I don't have anything there. you see I still have the, gonna put that over there. You can see here's how the character looks with this cool armor. I find this hilarious, and I'm gonna keep using it that way. Um, really gonna work on saying so much. Really sorry about that. It's part of my personality. I am struggling real hard right after I said that not to say it again. So if we mouse over a couple of these things, like the weapons, you can see you can have different color text and all sorts of fun stuff. So I just put that information there. I took out the descriptions where I was like, oh, rocks, play the deadliest game of catch or whatever. That's not needed. Nobody cares. I took that out. And that's it. Basically, you can just put items and stuff down here, and you can scroll through, and it doesn't crash the game somehow, which I for some reason thought I would. Let's walk around for a minute. Oh yeah, there's the shield spot. The shields will still be in it. Added a couple of accessory slots. There are no accessories in this game yet, so we'll deal with that. Oh, I don't know if you noticed, but right now that defense and power is just listed above. Uh, There's no power because you don't equip a weapon, so I need to adjust that. Anyway, so you can walk the sliding feet walk. These still have the supernova explosions, but like it just doesn't fit. And you can walk underneath until you hit the walls there that are underneath, and that's kind of fun. Not a big deal. You can tell everything's using that new palette now. The single tall trees, right now you walk in front of them, but I want to redo these. They actually look better with how everything is, but they don't fit in. And we can walk around and smash some plants and throw the rock through the plant. And that's what we got. That's it. This is all I'm showing. There's more. There's monsters. There's places. There's a town, sort of. There's um, things. Things on the back end. Things on the back end I want to talk about. But that's kind of it. You find stuff, you do things. Armor, see, naked. Naked mode's still back. Armor, 2 defense. This, 1 defense. That's it. That's yeah. That's all I got. Oh yeah, the coins. The coins may look a little different when they appear. I don't know if you saw that. I was just kind of destroying stuff indiscriminately, but if we get a coin, you'll see that they're. Ooh, that did not look good. I'm still working on that. There's a bouncing tween effect that sometimes looks better than others. I don't know. That's actually really, really hard to do. But yeah, so the game looks like this now. I think it looks a lot better. And I think the palette makes a huge difference. I don't know if the palette makes more difference than these trees do. I feel like this feels a lot more foresty, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. But that's what we got. And now that we're back here, I just want to say, aren't you glad that these are gone? Yeah, made a big difference, right? I only took them out temporarily because I was like, well, if I'm not going to use these, I'm taking them out till I make something better. And then I didn't need to. So, experiment with stuff that you're doing. It might work out. That's probably going to be all I'm doing for this video. Like I said, there's so much to actually cover that I'm not really sure how to present it. So I'm just kind of haphazardly bounce around through this first one, and I think we're gonna talk about some of the overall world mechanics next time because there's even more to say about that. Anyway, thanks for listening? Question mark.